WPFW, that is really always speaking truth about power, stays fortified so that we can continue to do the work, so we can continue to have space for Make It Plain, and so that Reverend Mark can continue to do his great work here. So please, again, 800-222-9739, or you can go online to WPFWFM.org. Those are the ways that we can see the tally so we can thank you. But you can also use Cash App, which is $ WPFW. You text that to 801-801 and follow the prompts. Mark?
Well, no, and that's very important. Let me just say this, that folks, we're in a moment of more and more state prescribed and state sponsored media. Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, from the bottom of my heart, what you don't want to happen as this situation gets worse, that you look and say, oh my God, I should have given to WPFW. You know, once, so let's not put ourselves in that position. Number one, I was a guest on another show this morning, Katia. And, you know, people come to this country by the millions, escaping fascism and authoritarianism in their own country. And America is this place where the American dream comes true. And this belief that that can't happen here. People have convinced themselves that's not possible here. Right. And folks, if you just objectively look at what's going on in terms of access to media and news coverage, you will see it taking place. Also, the mythology of the Bill of Rights that, oh, that will never happen here. What we are showing and what we report on here at WPFW, in addition to the music programming, Jazz and Justice, WPFW is one branch that has kept the culture of jazz itself from dying. Oftentimes there's been an erasure of culture. You all, jazz is more popular in other countries outside. They have a greater appreciation for it. And to the extent that we have an appreciation here, it's because of WPFW. You don't have WPFW, you don't have the movement or the interest in building Jazz and Lincoln Center, from which our friend Winton is retiring from, okay? So we're not just saying this, everybody can call it somebody, we're trying to raise money. No, we're trying to keep this alive, and it costs money to do this. So please, ma'am, please, sir, not just for me, not just for Katia, but this institution, we must live, our institutions must live beyond us, right, and carry forward. So you are paying it forward for the next generation to join us. So please, ma'am, please, sir, just to repeat, WPFWFM.org, 800-222-9739, Cash App, $WPFWFM. Now, let me throw something else out here if I can do this, Katia. Cut me off. Y'all turn my mic off if I'm doing something inappropriate. If you got friends, each one tell one, say, hey, y'all on WPFW, right, y'all trying to do something for WPFW? Because this is it. And some of my colleagues, y'all, they're not on mainstream corporate media anymore. Don Lemon, who's been on the show, was gone. Joy Reid, who's been on the show. So this is the moment for independent journalism.
Absolutely.
And this has been taking place at PFW for decades. So we're used to it here. We know how to do it here. Many of us grew up listening to this. Reverend Jesse Jackson, God bless us. I'm in Chicago today as we are preparing for his memorial services, was a frequent guest of WPFW and supported independent media and independent radio and independent journalism. So, folks, we're not trying to break your bank. Make that pledge, give something. Many of us subscribe to other media. I mean, we don't know, these little apps on the phone. Before we know, we subscribe to something we don't even know we subscribe to. Am I right here?
So, you're so right.
On my phone, I didn't know I was subscribing.
Right.
So this is your chance to be proactive.
Right.
Be self-determining, Kuji Shakalia, in terms of what you prescribe to. So please, ma'am, please, sir, one more time, WPFWFM.org, 800-222-9739, $ on Cash App, $ WPFWFM. And, now in regards to me, yes, please give to this hour, make me look good so Katia and them won't fire me. So says he bringing any money, he bringing us $10. Y'all got to, we can do better. We've met our goals before, but this will, and you can give. Now, our pledge drive continues through the week, correct?
That's right. And, we're celebrating 49 years. So officially, the pledge drive continues through Friday. Saturday, we're having an all out on air birthday party. And you're going to hear from voices of the founders of WPFW, like Denise Oliver, like Sagiti Browdy, like Tom Porter, Tom Cole, Vaughn Martin, who actually dropped the needle. He played A Train and put us on the air with A Train. And Mark, I just want to emphasize, although this is a public affairs show, I know you're heavily into the music as well. And I want to emphasize that even in the jazz space, right? Jazz radio is highly, 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 I won't even say curated, I will say controlled. There are only certain aspects or certain styles of the music that you hear on a regular basis in these spaces.
That's
WPFW looks at jazz for what it has always been, which is a liberatory art form, which means that you're going to hear Wynton Marsalis. Yes, our dear friend is finally retiring from Lincoln Center. So you're going to hear Wynton Marsalis, but you're also going to hear an art ensemble of Chicago. You're going to hear a Kamasi Washington, right? But you're also going to hear an Irreversible Entanglements. And a lot of these others that I'm mentioning, Irreversible Entanglements or Art Ensemble of Chicago, they're not so featured on a lot of these jazz stations. They want the widest audience, which means they stay in the middle. They play bebop and hard bop and smooth jazz. Let's just say what it is. So they don't play all the styles. Here you get everything. You get all of it. And you get it delivered by people who live this music, journalists, activists in the music, and it's the same thing with the journalists we have. Reverend Mark, he's on our air right now, but he sure is in the streets. We've met many times at protests, or he's leading a protest or leading a campaign. Our dear brother, Reverend Hagler, leading the campaign against Target, even up until his demise. Reverend Jackson, the same thing. And also WPFW has always been a place where we continue to lift people up. So when legacy media really turned their back on Reverend Jackson in a certain kind of way, right? And we have to say it because they did. We don't turn our back on our elders. We don't turn our back on those whose shoulders we stand on, whether we stood on them 5 minutes or 50 years. We don't do that because they are history and they deserve to be heard. And so WPFW is really a special place for that. And we are in the best of the Black radical tradition. That is not to the exclusion of anyone else. So we're not saying that. I know people take that and said, oh, you said Black. Yes, we said Black because Black is being erased right now. And so we want to make sure that you understand front and center, this is an entity for all people, but it was birthed out of the founders of WPFW, understanding that in 1977, the most marginalized, right, and oppressed people in the District of Columbia were the masses of Black people. The masses of Black people living here without a say in their own governance. And Mark is in that tradition. He's in that tradition of a Reverend Hagler, a Reverend Jackson, and what he brings to the air. So now is the time for you to be in the tradition of giving, in the tradition of making a difference. This is an excellent way to become an activist, by the way. Supporting Make It Plain, supporting WPFW. You may not be able to be in the streets, you may not be able to lobby Congress or lead a campaign, but you sure can. Many of you can, not everyone. We know times are tough. So if you are able, that's all the more reason you give for those people that need this information but cannot afford to. That is what community looks like. 800-222-9739, or you can go online now to WPFWFM.org. 6:50 to go. Mark?
All right, Katia, we thank you. We'll be checking back in with you a little bit later this morning. All right.
Yes, indeed.
You. All right. Take care now. Folks, as we mourn the Reverend Jesse Jackson, we have a very special guest on with us. And he is my elder, one of our elders, and he reached out to me last week and put a thought in my mind that I ended up sharing with others, because this must be a full conversation we must have about the legacy of the Reverend Jesse Jackson. Let me just say that my guest is professor and chair of the Department of Africana Studies at Cal State University in Long Beach, chair of the organization US and the National Association of Kawaii Organizations, executive director of the African American Cultural Center and the Kawaida Institute of Pan-African Studies, co-chair of the Black Community Clergy and Labor Alliance, the author of numerous scholarly articles and books, including Kawaida and Questions of Life and Struggle, Ma'at, the Moral Ideal in Ancient Egypt, a study in classical African ethics, selections from the Husia, the Sacred Wisdom of Ancient Egypt, Introduction to Black Studies in its fourth edition now, Odu Ifa, the Ethical Teachings. He's the creator, as we most know and love him for, of the Pan-African cultural holiday Kwanzaa and the Nguza Saba, and the author of the authoritative text entitled Kwanzaa, a celebration of family, community, and culture. He's the subject of Dr. Malefi Asante's book entitled Maulana Karenga, an intellectual portrait. And he is in the process of completing a major work on Haji Malcolm X entitled The Liberation Ethics of Haji Malcolm X, Critical Consciousness, Moral Grounding, and Transformative Struggle. Of course, as you know, we just recognized Haji Malcolm X's martyrdom just this past weekend at the Shabazz Center in New York. Here today to talk to us about the Black freedom movement legacy of the Reverend Jesse Jackson. Draw nigh and listen, folks, is none other than our dear comrade in the struggle, who's been in the Black freedom movement all his life, Dr. Maulana Karenga. Dr. Karenga, thank you for joining us once again on Make It Plain. And thank you for wanting to have this conversation and not just confine Reverend Jackson to a decade or one part of civil rights. Thank you for that.
That's right. That's what I said. Thank you so much for the invitation and opportunity to talk with you and your audience on something that's so critical to us at this turning point in our history. This is we always say we're living in dangerous, difficult, and demanding times. And we need to stand together to weather this storm. We've weathered winters, the worst of winters before. And so we will get through this. But we must be serious and we anchor ourselves in the best of what it means to be African and human. Speak that special culture truth to our people and to the world, and dare to transform this world into something worthy of the name human, right? That's very important. And that's one of the tasks that Dr. Mary McLeod Bethune gave us in her time in the 30s. She said, our task is to remake the world. It's nothing less than that. So that's a comprehensive conception of it. I'm glad also to come and bear witness to a strong brother with whom I worked and I have great respect for here. And I don't say I had respect for, I have respect for, because our ancestors are always with us. And I wanted to start by also making a slight correction. I'm Professor Emeritus and former chair of Black Studies because I've stepped into another space. I didn't retire. I simply stepped into another special space where I would continue my intellectual and practical work. So Professor Emeritus is my new title. So
congratulations.
Thank you, Santa. I continue to struggle. I keep the faith and I hold the line, right? And so let me start off by saying what we call Kaim Hotep for our brother Nana, and Nana means honorable one, Nana Jesse Jackson, and we give that title to people who are ancestors now. And I would like to say, on behalf of my organization, the African American Culture Center, that we share the great loss of Reverend Jackson, a constant soldier, a brother who would not sit down before the struggle was won, who fought to the end of his life, who taught us good ways to go forward. And so we share this loss not only with his widow, Sister Jackie, but also his whole family, all his friends and loved ones, and certainly with his people, because he's a loss not only to his family, but to our people as a whole, and even to the world. And so we share this loss and we say, may the joy he brought and the good he left last forever. And may Sister Jackie and all her family and friends and loved ones, all his family, friends, and loved ones, be blessed with consolation, courage, and peace. For surely he is risen in radiance in the heavens and now sits in the sacred circle of the ancestors, among the doers of good, the righteous and the rightfully rewarded. Hotep, Ashe, Hetty. So when we talk about Nana Jesse Jackson, I think it's first and foremost important to put him in community and culture. Just like we do with Dr. King, with Haji Malcolm, we have to put them in the context of the culture. With Ella Baker, Nana Fannie him, in the context of the community and culture. Because when they are great, all great people have a message that has two aspects to it, a particular and a universal. Even if you talk biblical, Quranic history, or Dhammapada history, or Bhagavad Gita history, these messages first speak to the people who created them, right? And then they resonate with the best of what it means to be that people and humanity at the same time. So Nana Jesse is no different. That if he's a great person, he speaks to his people first, and through that speaks to the world. And so I want to put him in that culture, because a lot of times people lift our heroes and heroines, our moral teachers, our leaders, outside of our culture and our community, and make them great as if they're hanging in space. But the ideas they have, the grounding, the moral grounding, the intellectual grounding, right? The organizational grounding they get comes from their community, because ideas don't drop from the sky. They don't grow from the ground. They don't float in from the sea. They come from the context, the cultural context in which you find it. So first, in the community. Second, I want us to put Nana Jesse in the tradition of moral leadership that our community has produced from the beginning of time, all the way back to ancient Egypt. And of course, I wrote my second doctoral dissertation on that. But I want to go back to America and say, from the time we got here, in our struggle to be ourselves and to free ourselves, we began to expand the realm of human freedom in this country and therefore in the world. And so there's a tradition of moral leadership. And that it means the leaders see their role as a moral vocation, not as a job, not as something you just do to get attention, not to be ahead of the crowd, but to actually see this as a moral obligation to bring good into the world. And that's why it's important to define leadership. Leadership is a self-conscious practice of providing philosophy, principles that inspires practice among the people that not only satisfy their needs, but transforms them in the process, making them self-conscious agents of their own life and liberation. And if you see the statement by the family about how he worked to always create continuing generation of freedom fighters, right? That's a leader's idea, and to make the people themselves become the freedom fighter, to see that we are our own liberators, and that a people that cannot save itself is lost forever. That no matter how numerous or sincere your allies are, those who would be free must strike the first, the final, and decisive blow, as Nana Frederick Douglass taught us, right? And so I think it's very important for us to see that moral dimension of his leadership. And this leadership is general to our culture. So it can be from the Christian community, of our larger community. It can be from the Muslim community of our larger Black community, or it can be the original African religion from our larger community, the original African religion community and ethics community that fits also in our larger community. And you see that with Haji Malcolm X, you see that with Nana Harriet Tubman, Nana Sojourner Truth, Nana Ella Baker, Nana Fannie Lou and just on, and Nana Dr. Martin Luther King, of course. And so I want us to see that tradition, that's the tradition he comes into. So he's not self-made in the sense he made himself out of nothing. He made himself out of the rich cultural cloth of America, of Africans in America, of African Americans. And the other thing I want us to do is then place him in the Black freedom movement. Now, people say he's a civil rights leader, and in fact, that's true. But that's a smaller identity within a larger one, because the freedom movement has two phases to it. the first phase, 55 or 54 to 65, is the civil rights phase of it. The next phase is the Black Power phase, 65 to 75, right? And Nana Jesse was active in all of those, but he came into his own. He came into his own, guess where? In the civil rights phase of that. But it's the Black Freedom Movement. Why do we say the Black Freedom Movement? Why is that so important, right? Because when we don't use freedom, we diminish the concept of our work and our goal, right? The people around the world who borrow our moral vocabulary and our moral vision and sing our songs of liberation, they don't sing it for us struggling for civil rights, but for human rights. We're struggling and serving as a model and mirror for other humans who are oppressed and struggling to be free, right? A model to emulate and a mirror by which we measure ourselves. And our great leaders, like Nana Jesse, and like all the other ones, and I speak here of Haji Malcolm in remembrance of his sacrifice day, which was on the 21st, his day of sacrifice, in which he offered his life and his death in the furtherance of our freedom struggle. And he's part of that freedom struggle history. Now, a lot of times we have to ask ourselves, we must ask ourselves, why are we saying a civil rights leader instead of a Black freedom movement leader, a freedom movement leader? Because the dominant society has redefined what we are, and that gives them a chance to do several things. Number one, it erases Black, like it's all being done now. People think just the right wing does it, but sometimes liberal friends can do it because they want to be in a space that, they don't need to take our credit in order to be in it. We can say you were our ally, but you certainly weren't our leaders, right? This is our struggle. And we lost a lot of people in there. We gave everything to advance the realm of freedom in this country. And we fought for rights we shouldn't even have to fight for because we have them when we're born. Human rights, right? And so what happens here is that when you say civil rights, you get rid of Black and you get rid of this concept of freedom. And you also redefine what the people who fought the struggle named their struggle. We called our struggle in the 60s the Black freedom struggle. We said freedom now, not civil rights now. We took freedom rides, not civil rights ride. We had freedom school, not civil rights school. Rescue me if I'm wrong, right? And so we say freedom now, right? And even the March on Washington is jobs and freedom. It wasn't jobs and civil rights. It was jobs and freedom. So I think it's very important for us not to lose that rich concept, that rich idea that's central to me, what it means to be human. Haji Malcolm said, I put freedom first. When we say, all of us used to say in the 60s, what do you want? We said freedom, justice, and equality. Then the Black Power period, we added power. Freedom, justice, equality, and power, right? Haji Malcolm said, without freedom, we can't talk about justice or equality. Just think about it. We hadn't gotten to the Black Power period, but he said, the one we first said, freedom, justice, and equality. We cannot talk about justice and equality until we talk about freedom. Freedom is essential to life, and there is no justice in unfreedom. There's no equality in unfreedom. So freedom is a central idea, and when people move us away from that, then the conversation we had about human rights being the central right, the rights we had from birth, what Haji Malcolm called God-given rights, and Martin Luther King also God-given rights that we have, then they diminish the struggle. They diminish the definition of all the sacrifice, service, and work and struggle we offered in expanding the realm of human freedom and justice and equality and good in this world.
What a powerful reconnection. And I hope people hear what Dr. Karenga is saying. We did refer to all of those events and moments as freedom events. not just civil rights events. And I think we'd also do well, Dr. Karenga, if you could speak to Reverend Jackson's global impact. Because when we talk about the freedom movement, and I guess that would be, so if we say the Black Power era is 65, 75, would you say 75 to 85 and maybe beyond that, maybe even 75 to 95? The Black freedom movement's outspoken connection to freedom struggles on the continent and in the Caribbean. And he was there for that. You don't end apartheid without the Black freedom movement in the United States and the role Reverend Jackson played in that as well, correct?
That's right. And the important thing is to see that he saw himself
Yes.
in world historical terms. And one of the beautiful things I liked about Jack and Jesse is that he would not accept a ghettoization of his task or his identity, right? So when he stood up and said, we must look at the world. Haji Malcolm has said this, right? Of course, Haji Malcolm continuously said that we can never understand ourselves in totality and accurately unless we see ourselves in the context of the world. We must not leave ourselves, but we must understand that we are in the world and that what is done in the world affects us. So we want a good world, because if not, we're always surrounded by suffering or threats or whatever. But we must, as Nana, Dr. Mary McLeod Bethune said, we must remake the world in order for us to have the kind of freedom, justice that we deserve. And one of the beautiful things about Nana Jesse is that he does this when he's beginning to say, let's also expand our concept of who can be president in this U.S., right? And his campaign was clearly an event and process of historic challenge and significance. And one of the things I want to remember is that in his announcement of his candidacy speech, Nana Jesse seemed to sense the invitation of history which confronted him, because that's what he was answering, an invitation of history. He said, and I quote him here, we sense that we are part of a special moment in history, pregnant with possibility. That sounds like Naya also, right? So, and he said, quote, we courageously press forward, for we dare not abort this moment. We are destined to redirect the course of this nation, and we shall. Such a conception of history and destiny suggests that Nana Jesse not only perceived the possibilities available at this particular moment in history, which extends now, but he felt essentially able to assume the burden of leadership which this critical historical moment demanded. And he would not let people reduce him to the ghetto, but he was always rooted in the community, right? And he not only took this and enlivened the Democratic Party. I'm coming to the world, but I want to give the context. But right. he redefined what was important in life. He raised issues that everybody else were afraid to raise or raised in inadequate ways. And he began to say, look, you know, African American historical legacy of setting the moral and progressive agenda for this society is tied to raising issues and waging struggles which have continuously liberalized the U.S. system and benefited not only blacks, but all other people, poor, dispossessed, and oppressed people, and other third world peoples, women, seniors, disabled, and others. And in regard to setting this progressive moral agenda, Nana Jackson challenged the monopoly of white established order had on foreign policy. He said, you know, that's what white people deal with, foreign policy, man. You need to stay here and talk about the gangs, you know what I mean? But he said, hey, you know, we're world historical people, right? And not only did he upstage the Democrats and Republicans by success in this era, you know, freeing hostages and talking about human rights in Cuba and Syria and Iran, you know, he also demonstrated the relevance of foreign policy for black people and other third world people. I repeat, not only did he upstage the Democrats and Republicans by his success in this area by his teaching, by his focus. But he also demonstrated for us as a Black people the relevance of foreign policy for us and other third world people. And furthermore, he showed it could be pursued with a greater emphasis on morality, right? He demonstrated the need for negotiations, right? The possibility that we could get more by diplomacy than the kind of vulgar and brutal militarism that was at the heart of American foreign policy. So not only did he step forward and actually negotiate and get the release of hostages, and at the same time stress human rights as key to a just and good world, but he posed a possibility of diplomacy as an opposition to militarism. You see what Miller and them said, in this world, might makes right, right? So in a world of force and power. And when he says power, they mean power over, not power with, right? They have a zero conception of power. But I always like the Ifa, the sacred text Ifa teaches that one of the most important things in creating a good world is moral wisdom adequate to govern the world. And this word govern, akoso, means pulling people together, gathering people together for good aims and goals, for goodness in the world. And so unless we see this moral conception of government, we have the gangster regime that we have in place now, right? And what Nana Jesse did was focus on the correct and critical issues which speak to the poor everywhere, the disabled, the aged, the marginal, as well as the progressive who wanted to stand up and be allies in the struggle to bring political process to change the world the way we know it and to build an inclusive good for everyone. And that's how I saw him coming forward. Mm-hmm.
And it's accurate. I mean, what you saw and what you're describing is absolutely objective because history is objective. And so if we, in fact, I'm getting texts now, Larry Ham from People's Organization for Progress in Newark. Thank you for your insight, Dr. Karenga, Pamoja Tutashinda. And we're also hearing from Reuben Brown is giving an on-point, Dr. Karenga is giving an on-point discussion about the importance and legacy of Reverend Jesse Jackson. He knows what he's talking about. So as you say that, and first of all, I want to be sure I added an era somewhat after Black Power 75 to 85 or 75 to 95, the international focus. Dr. Karenga, as we talk about that, though, it seems to me what made him exceptional in that role is that his lifespan intersected all of these eras. He was in those eras. Some of the people in the civil rights movement didn't go beyond 65. So that made a difference for him to be a public witness and alive, as were you, in those eras. That was a time to be alive, so as to intersect all of those spaces and tie all that together. Correct?
Yes. Conditions create consciousness, but consciousness create condition. And one of the things I wanted to stress with Nana Jesse is that he recognized and accepted the invitation of history. Sometimes history offers us invitations, we might not take them, we might not see them, right? We might not feel ourselves able to do all these things, right? And we might just go back and do the routine things, right? But Nana Jesse saw himself, as I quoted to you, his statement of seeing this as a moment pregnant with possibility, and that he, based in his own tradition, the freedom tradition, had a role to play. And that's why it's so important for us to talk about freedom. Our freedom struggle is an ongoing freedom struggle. And that's why I was glad when you said, even after the Black Power movement, the freedom movement continues, and it takes different forms it remains a struggle on the ground here in America, not just with police violence, struggle against police violence and resistance, but also the issues that have always been with us. You know, the capacity to live a good and meaningful life, to have the conditions and capacities to not only have a life of well-being, but to have the condition and capacities to develop and to flourish and to come into the fullness of ourselves as human beings, as social beings, as natural beings, right? And so to take away the movement's defining identity as a Black and freedom movement is to erase this essential goal, right? And erase Black from it and fail to give recognition to Black people who suffered the savagery of unfreedom and waged the essential struggle to end it. Indeed, the struggle or movement was not an anonymous struggle, nor a general struggle of various people equally oppressed. On the contrary, it was a life and death struggle of Black people to free themselves and to be themselves without racist restraint, penalty, persecution, and oppression. And when they looked around the world, right, first in Africa, right, and non-injustice was very important in the apartheid movement, as you said, right, but also in the liberation movement. And I worked with my organization, and I worked with his son, Jesse Jackson Jr., on struggling to get a real bill for Africa, you know, that was not the one that finally passed. I worked with negotiating with Jesse Jackson Jr. and Nana Charles Rango, because they had a little struggle there, but we got that together. But it was just us Black people thinking about us in the world, right? Not only as human, not only as Africans, but also as world beings. You know, I always say this in Swahili, we have two words for the human person, Watu, which is people or human being, and Walimwengu, which is world beings, natural beings, beings that belong to the whole universe. And I always like that. And even if Blacks don't know this intellectually, they have a sense of it. They have a sense that they belong not only to a country, but to the world itself, to humanity, to the human community. We know we belong to the Black community, but we also belong to the community of those oppressed and in struggle. We used to say in the 60s, Haji Malcolm, Messenger Muhammad, and used to say, Nana Du Bois and Nana Mary Clapton used to say, the dark peoples of the world. We have a community with them in their struggle to free themselves and be themselves. And I just want to stress again, why this is important in terms of this freedom, is that it also had been two aspects to our struggle, to our liberation struggle, the struggle to be ourselves and to free ourselves. And if we don't be ourselves, we can't free ourselves.
That's
but
right.
if we don't free ourselves until we fully free ourselves, we can't fully be ourselves. So it's always an interrelated process of struggling to be ourselves and to free ourselves and to finally come into the fullness of ourselves, to flourish, and with other like-minded people, build a good world we all want and deserve to live in and leave as a legacy worthy of the name African and human. Mm-hmm.
Dr. Maulana Karenga, folks with us as we talk about the Black Freedom Movement legacy of the Reverend Jesse Jackson. We're going to hear more about that. First, I got to bring on, though, this is our Pacifica Pledge Drive. WPFW-FM is a Pacifica station, and Pacifica, as we know, has its roots in Cali, where Dr. Karenga is. Our program director, Katia Stitt, is going to join us once again. And let me introduce you to Dr. Karenga. Meet Katia Stitt, who is the daughter of jazz legend Sonny Stitt. Dr. Karenga. That's who it is right here. So,
nice to meet you. Nice to meet you.
It's my honor to meet you, Dr. Karenga. Thank you so much for all that you've done for the community. Absolutely. And it's been a riveting conversation. So much history dropped in 15 minutes? I mean, it was like bam, 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 right? Like everything. But, you know, this is not a surprise because this is what Reverend Mark Thompson does every week.
That's
world-class guests every week on Make It Plain. So we do have some folks to thank. I'm going to just hop over to that space for a moment. We want to thank Dr. Chase out of Leonardtown, Maryland. Thank you so much, Dr. Chase, for your pledge of support. We also want to say thank you to Stanford out of DC. Thank you so much. And Stanford went on the web. You can too. The website is WPFWFM.org. We are in need of $430, you all, between now and the top of the hour. And we can do this together, folks. We only do it with you. WPFW is your community station. And of course, as you said, Mark, Pacifica beginning in Berkeley, California. Actually, it sits in Oakland. We say Berkeley, but the physical building is in Oakland on Martin Luther King Avenue. Yeah, Martin Luther King Jr. Avenue. And so, but that's where it started. And we have to remember that Lou Hill, he truly believed that there would be a media outlet that would appeal to those who shared the values of that outlet. So when we talk about speaking truth to power, that is exactly what Lou Hill did. He was a conscientious objector. He actually was jailed several times for his belief. We're sitting here with two men who have put their lives on the line. We're talking about another man who put his life on the line again and again to liberate Black people. I love what you said, Dr. Karenga, about us being, we know it inherently, whether we know it intellectually or not. Inherently, we know that we have a connection to all oppressed peoples around the world, whether they look like us or not. You know, and many of them look like us, many of them don't, but we share that connection. And Pacifica Radio, WPFW has always been here for the marginalized, for the forcibly silenced, forcibly. We always say the voiceless, but often it's because their voices have been taken away through oppression. And so make it plain. And Reverend Mark Thompson brings you this kind of knowledge, this kind of discourse every week. And we ask you to be in solidarity with his great work right now. $430 to go. The number again, 800-222-9739, or you can go online to WPFWFM.org. If you want that local number, 202-588-9739. And of course, our Cash App is $WPFWFM. You text that to 801-801. The important thing is, though, that you support that which supports you. So many times we will be supporting other things that do not support our well-being. And we're talking about supporting our well-being, the collective well-being now, supporting for those who need the information but don't have the financial resource right now, who are struggling. If you've done well and you want to do something great, not just for yourself, but for the community at large, and remember, we're talking global community because we're streaming everywhere. People hear us everywhere. If you want to do something for those that are truly the most vulnerable of us, the most marginalized of us, support truly, truly, truly independent media that speaks from the people, to the people, for the people. 800-222-9739, WPFWFM.org. You can also go with the Cash App at $WPFWFM. $430 to go. We can do this together. Mark?
20 of you give $20 real quick. Let's do this real fast. 20 of you give $20 and one of you give 30. Make this pledge. And as we said earlier, how many of us on our phones are subscribed to apps we're not even don't even know we're subscribed to, and we're paying some every month before we realize we're subscribed to them. Subscribe to this medium where you can hear the likes of a Dr. Maulana Karenga. We need this, folks. And again, if we haven't been keeping up with the news, legacy, mainstream corporate media is going the other direction. The man is going. He just told Netflix to fire the sister Susan Rice.
That's right.
For the Netflix. So we are at a place of state-controlled, state-sponsored media, but not right here. That's not the tradition of Pacifica, and it's not the tradition of what we're doing. We're talking to the founder of Kwanzaa.
Yes.
The founder of the organization, us,
yes.
who's right there in the midst of it all, talking about his comrade, the Reverend Jesse Jackson, and our elder and our leader and our teacher. So much going on here. WPFWFM.org, 800-222-9739, $WPFWFM. 20 of you, $10 a piece. $20 a piece. 40 of you can give $10. Please, ma'am, please, sir, we appreciate you. We thank you. Continue. Dr. Karenga, yes.
Absolutely.
I want to say to my sister, thanks so much for that appeal. We need that. We need to support independent radio. You know, we lost a lot of voice like this. And I want to say right now, I don't want to discourage anybody else from donating, but I want, on behalf of my house, House Timoyo, and myself and our organization, I'm committing $500 to make sure you get that
wonderful
that you have.
God bless you, Dr. Karenga. Thank you so much.
God
Thank
bless
you,
you
Dr.
and
Karenga. We love you for that,
Reverend
man.
Matamela and
Thank
all
you.
of our people.
Or Mansamilla, that's right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Tia.
Yes, you're welcome. Hopefully I'll come back on the other side to thank some folks real quick
Okay,
at
sure.
the
We'll
end.
come back
Okay,
before we go.
Mhm.
Sure,
Yeah.
certainly, certainly.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your generosity, Dr. Karenga. And
Thank
obviously,
you so much.
Dr. Karenga gets it in turn. You know, there was so much going on, and folks, not to make this about me at all, but I was going back over the, you know, I always said that Kwanzaa is special to me because we were born in the same year.
Yeah.
But also 1966 Black Panther Party.
Mm-hmm.
I believe us was 65, right?
65. Yes, we were 65.
Us was 65. So in 66, Black Panther Party, Kwanzaa, and in 66 is when Dr. King appointed the Reverend Jesse Jackson to be over Operation Breadbasket in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
So
And,
give
and
us.
six,
I'm
and
sorry. Go
six,
ahead.
in 67 was the year of the founding of the Simba Wachanga, the Young Lions. Our youth group was strong and, you know, made history also. You know, I want to give honor to them, and we continue that tradition of struggling. You see, we say continue to struggle, keep the faith, and hold the line. That's central to us. That's part of our identity, our purpose, and our direction. To
Yeah.
continue to struggle, keep the faith, and hold the line. So you're right. This was a golden age for us in terms of coming into consciousness, coming into structure, coming into struggle in a intense and new way. Mm-hmm.
No question about it. And you know, just to also just to, and I didn't get a chance to share this, you just to show the further intersections. Last year we lost Reverend James Lawson,
Yes.
and
Good he
so
left forever.
yes,
Giant in a
and
generation of giants.
that's right, Ashe. And on the day the Reverend Jackson transitioned, Reverend Lawson's 600-page autobiography, he finished it, but it
Huh,
was released last Tuesday on the day Reverend Jackson transitioned.
huh.
And so at the release here in New York, we acknowledged that Reverend Jackson called Reverend Lawson his teacher, and Reverend Lawson called Reverend Jackson his student. But what I was sharing with some of the younger people,
Uh-huh.
again, Dr. Karenga, the European study of history, as you and I have discussed,
Mm-hmm.
is linear, but
Mm-hmm.
the African view is circular. And so Reverend Lawson was born he was born in 28, and I think Dr. King was either 25 or 20, but they were contemporaries, they were peers chronologically.
Mm-hmm.
And so imagine, folks, to have a peer of Dr. King and to have a disciple of Dr. King and Reverend Jackson,
Mm-hmm.
and indirectly a disciple of the Civil Rights Movement and the Black Freedom Movement, Dr. Karenga, because that came right behind that.
Mm-hmm.
We are living
Mm-hmm.
amongst these. We just lost Reverend Lawson last year. Imagine if Dr. King had been allowed to live, or if Malcolm X had been allowed to live. We might know them as well. We knew and could touch Reverend Lawson. He lived to be 95. Who knows? Dr. King might have lived to be 95. So the point I'm making is we can't see history as something so distant and so far from us. We are living amongst these giants, even my children in their 20s, or a child who's 5 or 10,
Mm-hmm.
and say, I lived at the time
Mm-hmm.
of a James Lawson and a Jesse Jackson and a Maulana Karenga, right, Dr. Karenga?
Davo, appreciate what you said about Nzenga. Yes, you know, you're right. I want to just add a second African conception of history, not
Please.
only circular but spiral, that it does go around, but it constantly goes up. In other words, we progress from what we were before. And so I really want us to see that. Otherwise, we're just going around in a circle and not doing anything. But the progress required that the circle become a spiral. And I think that's the conception of African history that I have here. That this struggle has brought us to higher heights. That this struggle has brought us further down the road to freedom. I have to believe that. I've committed myself to believing that history is not something abstract, right? I teach that history is a very human thing. We bring it into being with what we do and do not do, right? When we do great things, that's history. But when we fail and turn our struggle against ourselves, and we become greatly, as Haji Malcolm used to say, zoom out now, the concept is injustice to ourselves. When we do injustice to ourselves, that's also history. And it blocks history, and it prevents us from coming into the fullness of ourselves. And so we have to understand history is not something simply written. Before it's written, it's a struggle. So history, rightly defined, is a struggle and record of a people in the process of shaping their world, not somebody else's world, of shaping their world in their own image and interest. So history is a struggle and record of a people shaping their world in their own image and interest. And that means constantly, and the beautiful phrase is from Nana, Dr. Mary McLeod Bethune. She says, I want us to honor our, quote, ceaseless striving and struggle. Striving and struggle. We strive for excellence in all we do, Ptahhotep said in the Hosea. We must strive for excellence in all we do. African must mean excellence. If it doesn't mean excellent, what does it mean? And so our history teaches us to strive for excellence, to struggle for good in the world.
That's
and
right.
This is the fundamental mission and meaning of human life the elders and the ancestors taught us. Oduifa says, let's do things with joy, for surely humans have been divinely chosen to bring good into the world. And we say this is the fundamental mission and meaning of human life. So whether you're a journalist or a janitor, whether you're a judge or a doctor or a lawyer or a teacher or a student, you take your moment, your life, your vocation, and use it to bring good into the world. That's what we say to the student. Take your profession, take your choice of life career, take it and bring good into the world. That is your responsibility.
Amen. Dr. Maulana Karenga, thank you so much for your generous contribution. Thank you, Gina, who just gave as well. Thank you for all of you who gave. And Dr. Karenga continues to give beyond his $500 pledge. We're so honored by that. He continues to give. And this will not be the last conversation. Other scholars are talking, and we're going to assemble and talk about the life and legacy of the Reverend Jesse Jackson in the context of the freedom movement. Thank you again, Dr. Karenga. If all hearts and minds, back to the studio, if all hearts and minds are clear, it has been made plain.
Good.